Hello everyone, welcome to Pep Prep Talks, back with another episode of Breaking Down Careers, and this time with Abbas Shaikh. Abbas Shaikh is a Web3 strategist and he has a previous experience of marketing for like 5-6 years. He's also part of Superteam DAO and actually posts a lot of content about NFTs on social media. I know, right? The introduction itself had like pretty new words, Web3 strategist. So we spoke about what is Web3 strategist role like, what does he do, and how did he shift his domains, basically coming from a marketing background, how did he get into a technical background. So I won't talk about it much. I think you should just go listen to the episode because he spoke about Web3 and everything in a much better way than I'm right now. So hi everyone. Abbas is here with us, and I'm really excited to have a nice conversation with him. Welcome to Pep and Prep Talks, Abbas. It's really amazing to have you here, and like really looking forward to talking about many things.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Let's get started.
Yeah. So first of all, like I do introduce the guest before, like in the intro part before we start recording, basically. But I want to know, like, how do you introduce yourself whenever anyone asks you?
It's difficult. It's been difficult lately to explain what I do, but at least a couple months ago, I would say that I'm a marketer, and I've been doing. I've been a marketer for around 5 or 6 years now. Social media consultancy, just working with brands, startups, and in various industries, and helping them go from 0 to 1 in marketing. Could be ads, could be organic, could be content, etc. On the side, I also used to do a lot of content writing, which led me to a lot of things in my career. And lately, I would probably sum myself as a Web3 strategist. I work in the Web3 space, helping projects, companies, creators go from 0 to 1 on anything in the Web3 space, from NFTs, etc. So that's what I primarily do.
Wow. Okay. How has your journey as a marketer has been, like for so many years that too?
Yeah, I mean, I started when I was still in college and my bachelor's. I had to figure out what my passion was. And I am a BBA student. So in the business stream, I was really interested in entrepreneurship altogether. And I wanted to find out what the quickest or the best way for me to explore entrepreneurship was. It definitely would not be by being an entrepreneur immediately, because it takes a bit of an upfront cost at understanding various things as far as knowledge is concerned, and even money, my own capital, right? So I had to find the easiest way there. And my easiest way would be probably working in a space that lets me understand entrepreneurship very easily, I'd say. So marketing was the best bet for me. No other stream came close, because marketing lets you be somebody who's independent, working with multiple brands, understanding the business model completely, and understanding audiences, which is core to entrepreneurship. So that's where my journey with marketing started. And before I could even jump into marketing, I realized that I had some interest in content writing. So my content writing journey started just a few months before my marketing journey, and that would be with writing content about tech, about the space, about the universe. I was a huge fan of SpaceX. I'm still am. Still am. I write a lot about everything from the universe to all things tech around space travel, etc. And that led me to understand that, hey, if I could write content for myself and my brand, my personal brand, I could write content for brands, for businesses that needed that service. And that's a transition for me, being a content writer for myself to for writing for brands, and then actually consulting them. And yeah, that's what I've been doing for, I'd say, the larger part of my career with marketing.
Wow. So when did you get into the social media part exactly?
I'd say somewhere around 2016. I was working with a few startups with their content side, and I realized that I could do more, right? Like I could work on other elements of their social media, talk about copy, creative, and even post strategy, calendar, etc. So I realized I could do that, and slowly I started realizing that, hey, I could do ads and ad campaigns just by learning Instagram and Facebook ads, just via Google, etc. So I figured those things out, and I offered my services to these brands locally, where I'm based from in Goa. And I started working with a bunch of restaurants, cafes, a bunch of startups that are based locally, incubated in a few of these incubators over here. And that's how I first got my social media gigs, I would say.
That's pretty early, to be honest. 2016, like
It seems like a while ago now.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay. So for instance, if you want to advise anyone to get into this marketing and social media domain, what would you say the prerequisites are, or like what would the roadmap be according to you?
I mean, even marketing itself has a bunch of things that you could
Hmm.
specialize in, right? Like I used to do a lot of everything, and that allowed me to be a little more flexible in many ways. Like I was not dependent on one core competencies. I could range from running ads to writing content. So, for a starters, for if you're starting in a space right now, fresh, especially after it's matured so much and everybody's a marketer, right? Everybody understands marketing because there's knowledge available out there, accessible. I'd say you have to be a little bit of everything because people can hire specialists, but generalist is a new thing now that people want somebody who can do a bunch of things together instead of hiring an SEO expert, a content expert, or ad expert, etc. So if you had to get started in the space, I'd say if you're not going to do everything, at least learn about everything, all bits of it. So say that, hey, I want to understand how content and copywriting works. I want to understand how social media engagement works. I want to understand how ads work and then SEO works. And if you don't even do SEO, which is fairly complicated, you don't need to do it. You at least have to have the know-how of how to bring together a team to possibly crack it, right? And that's what most companies will look for, what most startups will actually look for while hiring. They need you to understand the top level of everything so you can take charge. So I'd say take a bit of everything, and there's free resources available for marketing, at least plenty online. Just takes a Google search.
Makes sense. So, okay. So coming to your, like when I saw your Twitter profile, basically it's written as Web3 strategist. Now, what exactly is a Web3 strategist and what does the role look like?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is not a defined role that anybody knows of, right? Because the space is so new. We're probably in the first few years of the space, and like officially acknowledging it, at least in the mainstream media. And so Web3 strategist, in my understanding, is somebody who uh, creates the whole draft or the plan for a company to go from their Web2 strategy or their initial zero strategy to 0 to 1 on what does that structure look like? What does that jump look like? What does the leap look like? For example, Web2 is just whatever it is, Facebook, Google, etc. Right? That is the game plan, that is the business plan. What does the plan look like for a company to be called Web3? What are the elements of it? How does the user understand it? How do you get the right team and tech and resources to build on it? What tech stack do you build on? All of these things as a part of my Web3 strategy role, and actually helping them ship these projects is what I do by bringing the team together, understanding what blockchain to build on. Bits of pieces of like that is what I'd call Web3 strategist.
Now, this is quite interesting because your 5-6 years of marketing experience, and this is something totally related to Web3, which is tech. So, how did you like what piqued your interest basically that you need to try this domain and get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I had no clue this would happen, right? But one thing I've been very certain of in my life is whenever I have a field of interest, I'm open to doing anything. I have not bucketed myself to marketing. Like I said early on, I was an entrepreneurship person, right? Like I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I had a bunch of ideas as to write throughout my 5-6 years of being in college, etc., that I used to work on, or I used to at least want to work on. So I always had that passion for things or building something, but I never had the resources, and Web2 restricted me in that resources. And I'll tell you why I'm talking about that, right? Because there's a limitation of what a person can do with their creativity in Web2, which Web3 eliminates. Now I'll tell you how. In the Web2 world, you lack exposure on the global level, and Web3 solves for that because everything is permissionless, meaning anybody can come along, collaborate, and build something. In the Web2 world, you're restricted by regulations. You're restricted by people having to be of a certain age to be in a company. And there are multiple things, right? You remove the age barrier and needing to have a bank account as a barrier, and you can build amazing stuff. So where did my interest start? My interest started a couple years ago when I was into crypto, Bitcoin, understanding the core fundamentals of Bitcoin per se. And I used to talk a lot about Bitcoin, trying to explain to people why it mattered to the financial system and all of those things. And from there, I started gravitating towards crypto in general. Now, there are types of people. Some people are called Bitcoin maximalists. So they believe in Bitcoin supremacy and nothing else. But I'm the person who is open to everything. I believe you can't reject something just because you don't understand it. So I opened myself up to Ethereum, other coins, NFTs, And when that happened, after I understood Ethereum and the concept of rule of law, meaning a lot of your wealth on this world, I'd say 50% of the wealth on this world is intangible, by the way. It's not tangible, it's contracts and laws, right? So the government says you own a house, but do you actually own a house? Can they take it from you? Yes, they can. They own it and they've leased it to you for 100 years. That's how rule of law works. So smart contracts on Ethereum solve that or are replacing that problem. So I immediately gravitated towards this whole concept of smart contracts, and the world could be running on contracts governed by just code and not by bias or by people, right? And from there, I moved towards understanding digital things on the blockchain, virtual goods on the blockchain, understanding NFTs. And NFTs caught my interest extremely well. Like it stuck with me. I started investing in projects beyond just investing in coins, just being a part of a lot of brand new creator projects, influencers, artists, etc., understanding the space deeply, being a part of communities. And from there, I realized that NFTs could do a lot more than what people did. People thought they could do. Like people thought it was just about buying a random piece of art and doing something with it. But there's so much more utility to NFTs, right? And that was my exposure to understanding that, hey, Web3 can be a lot more things. It gives you ownership and power over whatever you build. And then I started reading and learning more, working with a bunch of projects, working with DAOs, writing about strategies in NFTs, writing about crypto strategies, tokenomics, all of those things. And that gave me the necessary understanding about the space to actually go and build stuff, or actually hire the right people to build it along with them, right? So I mainly lead these teams, but there are phenomenal developers out there that do the core work behind a lot of these projects. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned quite a lot of terms over there. So for me, you said NFTs really like got you interested in the whole space. So if I ask you what is an NFT, how would you explain it to me, considering I have no background about it?
Yeah. Let's think of it as, so let's take up the term first, right? Non-fungible and fungible token. So non-fungibility means something that cannot be exchanged directly without having to add any additional value to it. For example, if you take your house and my house, and if you decide to just exchange our two houses and call it like an even trade, it's not possible. Your house has unique properties, my house has unique properties. That's what makes it unique, even if the value is the same amount. Even if we say it's worth 100 rupees each, right? So that's what non-fungibility means. The assets are unique in nature. They are built in a certain way and certain location, etc. There are multiple traits and characteristics to it. Whereas fungibility is when you have two assets that are exactly the same. They may have some variation in their identification number, etc. But if you replace them, they have no issues. For example, if you have a 10 rupee note and I have a 10 rupee note and we replace it, you won't be worried about your note being with me and me being with you, etc. Right? It's the same thing. So that is fungibility. You can replace two things and have no worries about it. Non-fungibility is when it's two unique assets. Now, in the physical space, you had non-fungibility happening everywhere. You had art pieces that were unique, so you could tell what is unique, what is not. But the problem is you could not verify it. How could you verify something that's original? Not just art, right? Just take any good or product. How do you know it's not counterfeit? You do not have a verification that is at least proven. You can say maybe a site says it's original, but how do you actually prove it? On the blockchain, it's possible to prove these things because it's a public ledger. Think of it as an open book, which has every transaction recorded of who created what piece of art, a digital file, or even a line of code. Everything is marked to one wallet, whichever the wallet creator is, or whoever is creating it. And that allows you to understand that which one is an original piece and which one is not an original piece, or which one was created when in time and who owns it. And also check his entire history of transaction. So now that is what an NFT is. You've taken a digital file and put it on the blockchain and said that anybody across the world permissionlessly, without needing a government to approve you, without needing a bank to approve you, that you are eligible for this trade, you can go ahead and place a trade without having to go through a bunch of KYC processes, etc. Right? So the permissionless nature of the blockchain is what makes NFTs unique. Plus, it gives a lot of power to the original creator of things. Now, a great example of this is a creator could not previously receive royalties on their trade that happened in the physical space. But with NFTs, you can attach a 2.5%, 5% royalty every time a trade happens on NFT. So you will receive royalties for the rest of your life, even if you do nothing, just based on your NFT, right? So that's what a non-fungible token essentially is. Anything can be a non-fungible token. Even your phone number can be a non-fungible token. As long as it can be stored online, it is an NFT.
Interesting. So, okay. So what are, okay. So I've seen like people actually writing a lot of threads and on NFTs and Web3. So what kind of resources do you actually trust if you actually want to get into that field?
Right, there isn't much, honestly, like I said, because it's so new, and a lot of people's frustration is that hey, I do not have a structured way of understanding the space. The only people that make it or win in the space today are people who are willing to put the time to learn, and it's a lot harder than understanding stocks because stocks have dedicated resources to learn.
Yeah.
For NFTs, the biggest way to learn is actually being active in these communities, even before you start putting your money in. And I often say this, I've been saying this for the last year, that do not put money into NFTs. While I do it a lot of times, but I'd recommend not for people not to do it unless you are definitely sure you're going to be okay with losing that money first. Secondly, you're doing it to learn. And third, you have a game plan of what you're doing. You know the inside outs of NFTs. So I'd say start with just being in Discord servers, Twitter communities, talking to people about NFTs, joining Twitter spaces. That's the best way to learn, is just ask questions. And if you actually had to like consume resources and understand it, just go through YouTube channels. The one thing you shouldn't do is look at a random ad on Instagram or somewhere else and then start buying an NFT, because I can vouch for it. I can 100% vouch for it. Every ad you see on Instagram is a scam. And these are NFTs that we actively avoid in the NFT space. But the only people that buy it are people from Instagram, because they are not on Twitter. They do not know what a real NFT is or what a good NFT project is. We know it. So be careful of what you buy from where. Trust your sources, find the right people, and then understand what the project does. Once you understand what the project does, who the team is, whether they are doxed or anonymous, that is very important. A lot of the crypto space is anonymous. So if you find an anonymous creator, chances are they could rug you. That means that they could take your funds away and run, and nobody can stop them. But if they're doxed and their personalities are online, you can easily trust them. But that is not always true. I can make exceptions. Like, for example, Bored Ape Yacht Club is the biggest project in the NFT space. Their founders were anonymous for the longest time. They were anonymous for the last 8 months and recently got doxed, that too out of, not against their will. But they've been running a successful project. So it's not always true, but just be careful on how you do assessment on the right projects, etc.
True. So I also saw that you're working for Superteam DAO. So now what is a DAO, first of all?
Yeah. A DAO, DAO, it's called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. The name does not do justice to what it actually does. It's just like NFTs, right? It's fairly complex. You have to simplify it for people. But in essence, a DAO is an organization or a bunch of people that come together, and they have a bank account. Call it an internet community with a bank account is the best way I've heard to explain it. And they are now linked permissionlessly, either through some community, et cetera, to perform activities. They have a common vision, and they maybe have a common resource or a common fund to use to do things, etc. So they all have ownership in the upside of what the community creates. For example, if 10 people came together, they can create a community for investment, and they go and create a common wallet. They pool their money into the wallet, and everybody has a signature attached to that wallet. So the wallet funds can only be moved if everybody signs on that wallet and allows the funds to be moved to purchase something for that investment. Now, technically, the whole 10 people own that piece of investment. For example, if they say, if 10 people sign on it and we move, say, $100 from the account and purchase an NFT, now all 10 people own it because they have ownership over signatures. That's a explanation for us. Investment DAO. That's a DAO that does investment. A DAO can be anything. A DAO can be a service DAO. Superteam is a service DAO, which is it works within the Solana ecosystem, wherein it helps projects go from 0 to 1 and helps them with funding, resources, talent, team, etc., whatever they need to bring more people onto Solana blockchain or become crypto users or Web3 users. That's their goal. and anybody can go into Superteam, go to their server or go to their channel and website and find the right bounty to apply for. I run the bounty program over there. You can find a bounty for non-technical roles and technical roles for development, etc., and apply to them. And if you win the bounty, you get into the DAO. And that's the process of becoming a member of the DAO. But besides that, there are a bunch of things you can do. Just hang around and meet the right people. Yeah.
Quite interesting, I must say. It's quite fascinating to know these things for a person who's working in it, especially because all these theoretical definitions just take you away sometimes. So yeah. And okay, so I don't really have more questions, but one thing I was kind of this thing about that you said in Web2 there are regulations and in Web3 there are not. So do you think over the years when Web3 actually becomes a thing, there is a chance of these regulations coming into picture by any chance, since it will be available to many people and not just a certain set of people?
Yeah, absolutely. And there should be, right? I mean, you cannot have, the minute you have a space that has no regulation, it goes into the dark territory. We do not know what would happen over there, right? There are people that get burned all the time. And by burned, I mean they lose money, etc. So there is absolutely regulation even now, but it's not that clear at all. It's probably in just early stages, like extremely early, right? The regulations that were followed in Web 2 is something that Web 3 people try and abide by, but you cannot, because you're living on the blockchain. You have internet money now, which is permissionless and is not linked to any dollar or rupee. So there are a lot of moving parts to this, and there is no way of at least uniformly regulating the whole space without having to go through every nuance of it. Like, how do you regulate the entire crypto industry without going and finding out the details of NFTs? Details of DeFi, DAO is a different thing, right? Play to earn games are a whole different segment. So how do you do that regulation? So in due time, definitely I feel like regulation is the way to go. So there will be quite some things that will change, be restricted, etc., but we'll find a way to adapt to those changes.
True. So one of the funny things I found on Twitter was any problem post and anyone posts about it, everyone was like, Web3 solves this. So do you also believe that Web3 solves this, or do you believe that there are certain applications or certain areas where Web3 is going to do well and certain areas quite not sure about it?
Yeah, I mean, Web3 really is a buzzword right now, right? I mean, I work in the space, but I know people that are jumping into the Web3 bandwagon or NFTs or metaverse, etc., just because it gives them a lot of PR. And that's why the space has been kind of ruined for the people that are actually interested in the space. So no, I don't think Web3 solved everything, just like how Bitcoin does not solve everything. That's where the joke comes from, by the way. Anybody who says Web3 solves this is trying to make a mockery of the Bitcoin solves this statement. So it started a long back. Anything you could find in the Web3 space is probably stemmed from a joke in the Bitcoin world. But no, I don't think that's the thing. Web3 has specific use cases of what it should solve or should be solving or can solve. So I believe if pursued enough, it can solve a lot of problems, but it does not have to. For example, when somebody says that here's a problem or here's something I want to do in the space, I want to build a Web3 company, etc. My first question is, do you really need Web3 for this right now? Or are you doing it just because it's the best thing to do, just money wise and capital wise or PR wise? I've heard a bunch of people, pretty well-known people in the space that have huge Web2 companies wanting to move to Web3 and wanting to start a DAO just for the sake of it, right? My first question is, why do you need a DAO? Do you need your organization to be decentralized at this stage? Most people don't, but it just seems cool enough to do it. So no, I think everything has its purpose. So if your purpose aligns with the need for being permissionless, decentralized, all of these things, then surely go ahead. So yeah, it's case to case.
Yeah. So all the technical questions from my end are at least over as of now. If something turns up again, I'll ask. But yeah, so how does your day look like exactly, like with your main hustle, side hustle and everything?
Right. So like I said before, I used to work a full-time job, at least I'd say 2-3 months back at least. So I had a full-time job plus I had all of these things. So at that time, the day was completely different. I had a bunch of things to juggle with, but right now I am completely into this space. So my day starts out with actually going to this site called OpenSea.io. which is an NFT marketplace. And I just scroll through things, decide what I want to buy, decide what I want to sell, or I'm just absorbing things that are happening in the market. Then I spend most of my time on Discord servers, just in a bunch of communities that I'm invested in. Could be communities that I've already put money into, or could be communities I'm exploring whether I should put money into or not, depending on what the project does or what the utility of the project is. So that is my time early morning to absorb a lot of the space, understand what's happening on Twitter. For example, today morning, I don't know when this podcast comes out, but today morning is when Yuga Labs, that is the creator of Bored Apes Yacht Club, the Bored Ape NFT, just acquired CryptoPunks and MeBits, which is the biggest NFT or the first NFTs. So they acquired a whole NFT collection, 2 NFT collections actually, and they've essentially become the first NFT company to do this. So that is a huge thing, right? So waking up to this around 7, 8 in the morning and absorbing this first information, which is like a historical moment, is something I would not have expected to do. So that's what my early mornings look like, just learning about the space, and the rest of it is just going through with a bunch of teams that are working on multiple projects. Could be somebody's building an NFT marketplace, somebody's building NFTs, some are building gaming platforms, some are just doing community work for projects. So leading those teams is what I do. As well as, besides that, I also lead community initiatives with a bunch of projects. One I cannot name yet is a gaming ecosystem platform that I am currently working with on the community and marketing side. And the other is obviously Superteam DAO. So a bunch of different projects, just running those, keep making sure everything is happening, everything is functioning well, is what I primarily do.
Awesome. So we ask our guests, like whoever comes on this podcast, we usually ask about the day and also like the personal finance part. Like, how do you manage your own finances? Like after moving out of college, that's one big question everyone has. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think my interest in my finances started actually a long time ago, probably even before my master's. It was probably my bachelor's, right? But in my master's, I started taking things very seriously because I was doing an MBA in Bangalore, and I also had a part-time job there. So my program was structured very well. So we had college from 6 to say 1 in the morning. And then the rest of the day was me working at a company as a part-time role. And I acquired some funds, et cetera, and I started investing. That's my first investment journey. And after that, my finances have been largely managed by me. There's been no influence at all from anybody, no advisory, no help, etc. It's been just learning about finances and how to manage them via various channels, various sources, and all of those things. So yeah, I mostly do it myself. I have a bunch of Excel sheets I've opened up, and every sheet has 10 tabs from my net worth to my portfolio stocks to my maybe mutual funds to a bunch of other crypto NFTs, and it's all broken down on an Excel sheet. Probably a couple of apps, etc., that help me track all of those things, and they're mostly all auto updated. So I am in complete control of understanding where I stand at any point in time. And as an individual, I am more on the risk side. So that is why you'll often hear me talk about NFTs, because I take a lot of risk in that space. So yeah, that's what I think. That's a good brief about what my finances look like.
Understood. So that's all from my end, to be honest. So any final concluding points you want to tell the audience?
Not really. I mean, depending on what the audience is coming, if I hope I've shared something of value. But if I had to share something, it would be that do not reject a space without knowing about it. And that's what I talk about Web3 and NFTs so much, right? I don't ask people to buy into stuff because I know the fact that it's extremely unfeasible in many cases. NFTs are not easy to buy. Cryptos are hard to purchase. The volatility is intense. Like, you don't want to be in an asset that goes down 50% suddenly. But the least you can do is, because it's a new space, spend some time learning about it. So when the time is right for you to take those kind of risks, you are not out of information. Like, you have the information available for you to do those necessary things. So I'd say learn about it at the least.
Who is that? That was a good advice, by the way, in any sector. So thank you, Abbas, for giving your time to this episode and actually enlightening us about Web3 NFTs at least a bit. And it's coming from a person working in the space, so it's much more reliable than any other sources we find. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.